Ready Life, into the country.
Hi, I'm Nick Meisner.
And I'm Lisa, his wife.
And we want to welcome you back to the Ready Life podcast, where we help you gain the peace of mind that comes from making your family as independent as possible for basic necessities. You know, things like water, heat, food, and the electricity that most of these things depend on. This week, we're going to focus on preparedness and another area that's very important, and that's health in the midst of massive sickness. Does that sound familiar at all? I mean, something that we've dealt with over the last few years. And, you know, we've all seen how health-related issues can be used to bring the world to a standstill. And all the water and food and heat and power in the world isn't worth much if you have no health. So it is a really important thing, and we should probably be ranking it as one of the basic necessities, actually.
That's true. Water, heat, food, power, and health.
Yeah, right. So many folks have no clue how their body functions and how to assist it with healing. And with this ignorance comes a lot of fear. Fear is what we've seen a lot of over the last few years. So we're going to look at one particular epidemic that occurred 100 years ago, actually a little over 100 years ago. You probably heard about it many times during the whole COVID thing. It was called the Spanish flu of 1918. And it's estimated to have killed about 50 million people in the world, including 675,000 in the U.S. alone. And we're going to see that even though most conventional medicine was helpless in dealing with this silent killer, they just didn't know what to do with it. But there were actually some simple remedies that were used with amazing success. I mean, amazing success.
Phenomenal. The stories that I've heard over the years.
Right. So these same treatments have been found to help with many other issues as well. But, you know, this all goes without saying. So we're going to look at that. But I think it's important that we start this whole thing out with kind of the foundational building blocks.
That's right. What is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
So obviously, if we can live healthy lives or lifestyles and try, and avoid the sickness or the pandemics, that would be the way to go, right?
Right. So we call this acronym New Start, and stands for nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. And these 8 things are amazing prevention for helping the body to function at its optimal capacity and ward off sickness. And this is the prevention side of things. But at times, all of us are going to deal with sickness. And so it can be incredibly helpful to use more aggressive therapies when you're dealing with that to assist the body in recovering. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, there are so many different remedies that you can use. But today we're going to specifically look at one particular remedy that was used during the Spanish influenza. So there were 2 different men, I like to call this a tale of 2 different men, who lived during 1918 but had very, very different results. The first man was a doctor. The second was just a nurse. However, both of these medical professionals had very personal up-close contact with the people who were getting sick back in 1918. So the first man, his name was Dr. Roy, and he was actually posted at Camp Devens in Massachusetts. As you may recall, during 1918 Spanish influenza, we were at war. And his assignment was pretty much next to impossible. He would wake up at the crack of dawn, like at 5:30 in the morning, and he worked steady and hard all day long until 9:30 at night. And still death was claiming hundreds of soldiers every day. He felt helpless. Young, healthy, robust soldiers would wake up healthy in the morning, and by nightfall, they would have breathed their very last. This is how hopeless Dr. Roy felt. In his own words, he wrote, "It is horrible. One can stand it to see 1, 2 or 20 men die. But to see these poor soldiers dropping like flies sort of gets on your nerves.
Yeah.
It was terrifyingly hopeless, the situation that Dr. Roy found himself in.
And they didn't know what to do.
And they had no clue what to do. They threw the book at this thing. All the medicines that they could use, they even had a vaccine that they came out with that they tried using, and it did not seem to stop this huge hemorrhage of lives being lost, especially among the healthy, robust population.
That's what made it so unusual. Usually
Yes.
sicknesses go after the young and the old and the weak. But this one, the Spanish flu of 1918, really seemed to especially target the healthy and strong in the 20 to
Yes.
40 age range.
Yeah. So I really, I did a lot of research back in this was quite a few years ago. And
Before
I found,
COVID and
Yeah,
all
it was
that,
long
long
before
before
COVID. But I found a magazine that commented on this epidemic, and it really painted a vivid picture of what life was like for these people back in 1918 and what a real pandemic felt like.
And this was a contemporary magazine,
This
right?
was a contemporary magazine that was writing. In
While
fact,
it was happening.
This article was published October 31 of 1918. It was a magazine called the Review and Herald. And on page 16, you'll find where they said, "Our country at this time is passing through one of the most widespread and devastating pandemics that it has ever experienced. Gruesome accounts are given on every hand of cemeteries strewn with occupied coffins awaiting diggers to enter them, undertakers with dozens of bodies awaiting caskets, morgues taxed to their capacity, and additional buildings and even tents were requisitioned for the overflow. Among the living, many are dying unattended by physician or a nurse. The scarcity of doctors and nurses occasioned by the war has made adequate help to the suffering impossible. Every practical nurse and every other person that could at all minister to the sick has been called into service, and still there is not enough help." I mean, this in my mind paints a very vivid picture of what people back in 1918 were feeling. That you can hear almost that helpless, desperate plea for help, someone help.
Yeah.
But, in the middle of all of that chaos, there was one small glimmer of hope for a population that faced death on every side. And that one small glimmer of hope was a simple remedy that a few people, unfortunately, only a few people knew about, but they were busy using with very great success. And that brings us to a lowly little nurse named Paul Stuyvesant. His story was only one of many stories that I heard from this time period of people who actually utilized this simple water treatment, but had great success. I mean, really excellent. I actually talked to a lady who had a close friend who had a clinic during that time, and she said that as long as the person could walk themselves through the front door, she said she had almost 100% guarantee they'd walk back out.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, you've given us a little hint. You called it water treatment.
Yes,
We're going to
it's
get
a
into
water
what
treatment.
it is, right?
Yes. So Paul Stuyvesant was a nurse, and he was assigned to a college where there were students, and the college had just moved to a new plot of land, I think a year or so before. And so the students, especially the male students, they didn't have a dormitory built yet. So they were all living in tents. This was down in Collegedale, Tennessee area. If you're familiar with that, it's just to the east side of Chattanooga. Anyhow, he was the nurse that was assigned to take care of the students and, help with whatever day-to-day stuff would happen. Well, that particular year in 1918, they hit a record. Chattanooga, Tennessee got 18 inches of snow in October of 1918, which, by the way, of the whole pandemic, October was the deadliest month. That's when the most amount of people were sick. And here we have young, healthy, robust students in college who are sleeping in tents and 18 inches of snow on the ground. I mean, this is a recipe for complete and utter disaster. But Paul Stuyvesant had learned this simple water treatment called hydrotherapy, and he started working tirelessly day and night, doing one treatment after another, after another, after another. The school gave him an assistant because it was just him working. And so he and his assistant worked together doing treatment after treatment after treatment on all of these students. And guess how many of the students died?
How many?
Not one.
Wow.
Not a single. When you think about like what Dr. Roy was facing up in Camp Devens in Massachusetts and what Paul Stuyvesant was doing, like not a single loss. And so he and his assistant, after working so effectively at the college there in the Chattanooga area, they were called to another college over in Alabama, Oakwood College, I believe. Anyhow, so they were shipped over to Oakwood, and they continued doing these treatments day and night on all of the male students there at the college. And guess how many students they lost in Alabama?
Was it none also?
Not a single student
Wow,
did they lose.
That's amazing.
Unfortunately, this is the sad part of the story because Paul and his assistant both got sick, and there was no one to do treatments on them. Paul survived, but his assistant passed away. All because there was nobody else who knew how to do these simple treatments to save their lives after they had given so much to help so many people. Sorry.
Hence why we're doing this podcast, so that
Exactly.
everybody knows, because anybody can do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, this simple treatment is something that I've done in my own home a number of times. And it's something that anybody can do in their homes. It just uses towels and water, sheets and blankets and buckets, pots maybe, all things that you have in your own home right now.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah. So it's called a fomentation treatment. There are quite a number of old-fashioned hydrotherapy treatments that unfortunately are lost to the majority of us today, but treatments that our grandmothers used to use even. I even remember my grandma doing one of these particular hydrotherapy treatments when I was a little girl. But you know, these simple hydrotherapy treatments are just using water that you can get from your kitchen sink or that you can boil in your stove.
So what's the principle here? How's this working?
So with the water treatments, how they work, and the fomentation treatment is a little bit more involved than what I can get into today. But basically, you're using hot and cold water alternately, so that way you're getting a reaction in the body that helps boost the immune system function and helps your body to heal. So, for example, let's just talk about hot and cold for a minute. When you have hot water and you apply, or heat in general, and you apply heat to the surface of your body, your skin, what does that do to your blood vessels? Do you have any idea?
It expands them.
Yeah, that's right. Heat in general expands. But when we heat the surface of the body, it causes those blood vessels to dilate or expand. So that means you've got more blood flow in that area. So then cold would do the opposite, right? Cold, if you put cold on the surface of your body, it's going to shrink or constrict. Thank you. Contract those blood vessels really small. So if you alternate between the hot and the cold and then back to the hot, then basically what you're doing is you are dilating the blood vessel, then you're constricting it, then you're dilating it, and then you're constricting it. What does this look like?
A pump.
It looks like a pump. That's exactly it. And when you increase the circulation in your body, you're going to be mobilizing your immune system. So your immune system is able to get to the areas that it needs to get to more efficiently, and it's able to work more effectively on whatever it is you're dealing with.
Because your blood is the life of the body.
That's exactly right.
It's what carries life and oxygen and nutrition and everything all throughout the body. So the better your circulation is, the better your health is going to be.
Exactly. So every time you dilate the blood vessels, all that nutrition and oxygen comes flooding into the area. And every time you constrict the blood vessel, then it drives all of the waste products out of that area.
So I guess the theory of why this worked so effectively with the Spanish flu was that these people, I recall seeing a lot of accounts of people were turning blue within a very short time of when they would contract the Spanish flu. And that was kind of the trademark of this, is they would turn cyanotic or blue. And that was because they were drowning basically in fluid.
Yes.
And I think that it's surmised that that's why the healthy individuals were dying even quicker than the weak ones, because they were having a stronger immune response, which their body produced even more fluid faster, and the virus was attacking the lungs, and so they were drowning in their own fluids. So I'm guessing that what this treatment is doing is, by increasing circulation in the lung area, it's removing that fluid and inflammation, or helping to remove it so that you're not drowning.
That's
right?
exactly right. The hot and the cold, they used towels, which they called foamies or fomentations, and then they would put hot towels on the chest and then alternate that with cold rags over the chest. Now, thankfully, it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to get a really good vasodilation of the blood vessels. But it only takes 30 seconds to get a really good constriction of the blood vessels.
And that's your favorite part.
That's my favorite part, because I don't know about y'all, but I don't care for the cold so much.
So I'm saying your favorite part is the cold.
The fact that the cold is only 30 seconds, yes.
You got to realize Lisa used to torture people for years. She was a hydrotherapist. She worked at lifestyle centers that would actually do these treatments, and she would be doing hydrotherapy treatments on many, many people for years. So she tormented people for years. So I make sure that she gets a good stout cold treatment whenever I give her hydrotherapy treatment.
Oh, yes. He makes sure I pay very well for all of the poor souls I tortured. Anyway. Yeah, so they did the fomentation treatment included the switching of the alternating the hot and cold on the chest, as well as putting the feet into a hot foot bath. So they were trying to heat the body up overall. And your immune system, the higher, so this is kind of talking about fevers actually. The hotter your body gets, the more efficiently your immune system works, which is why your body will kick a fever on when you're fighting something or when you're sick. It's because it's the body's way of basically rallying the troops, getting all of the immune system effective and working on whatever it is you're dealing with. So when you try and get rid of that fever by taking medications, you're actually suppressing the immune system's response to whatever it is you're dealing with. But in the fomentation treatment, they would try to overall heat the body up while also doing the hot and cold on the chest. And that's the reason why this treatment was so effective for the Spanish influenza, and why it still works very well today.
But there's a number of steps that you want to follow with this, and some things that you want to be aware of, some situations where you might not want to do it, all of that. And like Lisa said, it's a little bit more than we can get into right here on this podcast, but we're not going to leave you hanging. We have a great resource for you. It's actually from a video that Lisa did years ago on a bunch of different hydrotherapy treatments. And we're going to give you for free access to the section on the fomentation treatment. And then there's also an accompanying book that goes along with it. And we're going to give you that chapter on the fomentation treatment. That it's really important that you look at both, right? Because the video shows the mechanics of how you do the treatment, but the book is more of the situation, the indications, contraindications, and those kind of situations.
Yeah, the things
right?
you need to be careful of, the things you need to watch out for. And just all of it actually goes into the physiology, which I just explained in the book as well, why the treatment works, because education is so key when you're even doing the treatment on someone to make sure that they understand why you're doing what you're doing too.
Right. So how can they get a hold of this? So
you can get a hold of this by going to thereadylife.com/hydro, HYDRO. So that's thereadylife.com/hydro.
And we'll get you the video and the book, the portion of the book about fomentation treatments. So you can see what worked so well for such a deadly sickness years ago that was so devastating to so many, but treatments that had phenomenal success. So it's always exciting when we hear about simple things that anybody can do to be more prepared for things. And it's not just the Spanish flu. These treatments, these simple treatments can be used for so many different things. I mean, we use them all the time for all sorts of things, whether it be a hot and cold shower, using that same principle of 5 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold in the shower. If you feel like you're fighting something, it's amazing how much better you can feel if you do that, and then rest afterwards for a little while, things like that.
Or a hot foot bath or a throat compress. There's so many simple things you can do right from the comfort of your own home to help your body to heal.
That's right. So I hope this was helpful and was inspiring to see the simple options out there that are available to all of us. And when we're in situations where maybe we don't have access to medical care, or maybe modern medicine doesn't know what to do with something, there's situations where sometimes, a lot of times, I think simple is best.
Yes, I agree.
Simplicity. So, hope y'all have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.